Today's episode is the final part of the three-part series titled Hatching from the Egg to Creating Your Own Nest Egg. Retirement is a goal we all have and we all hope to obtain one day. This concluding episode will focus on those who are approaching or are already in retirement and will discuss common pitfalls, misconceptions, obstacles, and fraud that target hard-earned nest eggs. You've worked hard to build your nest egg. Now, protect it.
Hello and welcome to Real Life Regulators. This podcast is brought to you by the North American Securities Administrators Association, also known as NASA. This podcast was created to educate investors using real-life examples of securities fraud cases. During each episode, we typically review different cases and discuss what went wrong, how you can identify the red flags of securities fraud, and what you can do in the future to protect yourself and your loved ones from a similar situation. Today's special episode is part 3 of a 3-part series titled Hatching from the Egg to Creating Your Own Nest Egg. We will cover best practices for retirees in protecting their nest eggs, how to avoid fraud, and the continued importance of planning for the future. I'm your host, Nick Bonderoux, the Education and Public Affairs Manager for the Alabama Securities Commission. Today's co-hosts are John Eichhorn, Kansas Director of Compliance and Enforcement with the Office of the Kansas Securities Commissioner, a division of the Kansas Insurance Department. Lynn Peters, Washington Department of Financial Institutions, Director of Communications, Financial Education and Outreach. And Tina Kotzelis, Director of Investor Education and Consumers Outreach Office at the Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities. We'll also have 2 guest speakers, William Baldwin and Quincy Carlos from Washington Securities Division. Today's podcast will be a conversation, a discussion about what we've seen and experienced in our time at the agencies and best practices we've learned as a result. We hope you'll get some information to help keep your nest egg safe from financial fraud. We'll start with John Eichhorn from Kansas. John, tell us a little bit about yourself. We know that you spent quite a bit of time in law enforcement before coming to work for the State Securities Division. What did you see in those years? What tips did you discover, and how are you putting those to use in your current position?
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate that. A little bit about myself. I spent the past 34 years in law enforcement. I'm actually currently a certified law enforcement officer here in the state of Kansas, and I actually retired from the Kansas Highway Patrol after 30 years with that agency. So I've spent a lot of my adult life in a position or a profession where I feel like that I've been able to help people, and that's one of the most rewarding parts of being a law enforcement officer is helping people. And in my years of working as a state trooper with the Kansas Highway Patrol, I did help a lot of people. Of course, it was in a much different capacity as I'm doing now in my current position as director here at the Kansas Insurance Department. But really the similarities are still the same. I get to continue to help people. And I have a small team of people here that are doing the same thing. I've got a crew of 8 law enforcement officers that have the responsibility of investigating securities and insurance fraud. So the crimes that I see now as a director in the position that I'm in is much different than it was back when I was a state trooper, but again, still very much the same. One of the things I'll tell you that I find now in my new position, I've only been in this position now for about 4 years, and that is that there are a lot of scammers out there that are willing to take your money, your hard-earned money that you have invested into opportunities to make additional monies. And sadly, one of, again, the things that I'm seeing most disturbing is that the elderly are being preyed upon by folks that are looking to defraud others of their financial fortunes.
Hey, John, this is Lynn Peters out in Washington State. Hey, I got some questions for you. What are you seeing? You say some things are similar, but some things are different. What are you looking at today that you saw something similar to that.
Yeah, Lynn, I appreciate that. The similarities really are in that the criminal element is always going to be the same. I mean, when it comes to bad people trying to do bad things, the element is still the same. They want to benefit themselves, and they're going to take from others to accomplish that. And like I mentioned, one of the things that we see is that the elderly, the population that really has the most wealth in our nation, and I found recently a statistic that that sounds about right, and that is about 75% of our nation's wealth is held by people that are over the age of 50. So you can see why this age group, those that have taken the time to build a sizable nest egg over their working years, are going to be the biggest target for fraudsters that are wanting to take that away.
So what are some of the big things that you're seeing in Kansas right now?
Well, the different types of frauds that we're seeing really in Kansas and all over the country are similar in that the internet is probably the easiest way for people to get to other people to scam them. By internet, I mean, there are many times when I get phone calls from people that feel like that they've been taken, and the narrative is really a lot of times the same. The story goes something like this. I was online. I was chatting with a group of people that had a common interest to mine in that I want to invest money to make money. As a retiree, I want to make sure that I can leave something for my children. I want to have enough to live on comfortably. So while on the internet, I met a group of people that shared the same interest in what I was looking to do. And I became friends with them. And through that friendship, I found that these folks wanted to help me actually take my money that I had and make something of it. So I'm not very good with computers. You'll hear that a lot of times from seniors. Not very good with computers, but they're good enough to be online chatting with someone. So these folks will befriend elderly people and help them with the technological aspects of being online, with setting up accounts, for example, setting up an account to be able to transfer money from their checking account to somebody else's bank account. And one of the things right now that we're seeing a lot of is where they're using cryptocurrency as a means to transfer this wealth from fiat currency to cryptocurrency. And a lot of elderly people don't understand cryptocurrency. And understandably, a lot of us don't understand cryptocurrency, but they're walked through the process where they may even walk down to a local ATM, a crypto ATM, and deposit their money into a wallet of a scamster or a fraudster. But the types of frauds that we're seeing, a lot of times they're not small. I mean, they can be over $100,000, which is a significant amount of money for somebody that's saved their nest egg their whole entire working career, and now is taking the advice of somebody they've met online and investing it into something that they think is going to make them money. One thing that we also see is that a lot of times seniors, if they are behind in what they're attempting to accomplish wealth-wise in their life, maybe they've got a certain dollar amount in their head that they want to leave to their children. They're not there yet. They didn't save as much as they thought that they should or could have. So they're wanting to quickly catch up. This is really where we see a lot of problems, is when you are trying to make money quickly. Nothing is really that quick. If it sounds like an investment that's going to make you money very quickly, you need to be really cautious of those types of investment opportunities. Generally, those things don't exist. But fraudsters know that many of our senior citizens that are wanting to take their nest egg and build it even higher are in that mindset that they really want to catch up on the amount of money they've got saved.
I agree. And I see a lot of folks in our senior centers here in Washington State being approached about crypto. They ask me about it all the time. My pat answer is if I don't understand it, I'm not going to invest in it. Talk to an investment professional, a licensed investment professional, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that is exactly right. And it is surprising how many times people, when they don't understand something, will still hand over their hard-earned money in investing in something like that. I think a lot of times, though, when you think about it, it is those hard to understand schemes that sound really good that are the most enticing to us. Investing in something, like a company that you've heard of for a lot of years that have been around for a long time is pretty steady income coming up through the value of a particular stock. But something new and something you don't understand, you want to be in on the cutting edge of something like that.
Yeah, and I know I see some folks, we've talked previously about annuities. I've asked folks upstairs about it because I totally don't understand it. Any of the folks here have told me they're a very complicated investment product. How often do you see folks jumping into that?
Often we find this often. And what's sad is a lot of times we find these types of investments. Well, I'm saying that sometimes, you might meet somebody you don't know on an online in a chat group. It can be as easy as talking to somebody at church. Affinity fraud is something that we see a lot of times where it's actually people that that get you into these things. When you think about it at church, for example, if you go to church and a fellow parishioner is telling you about a great investment that they've got into by one of the other parishioners, you listen to that because you trust these people automatically because of your relationship. And unfortunately, there are people in our own trusted circles that will take advantage of us. And we see that often. So it doesn't always have to happen, in an online chat group with somebody that you don't know. It can be somebody that you know very well that could take advantage of you. So we need to be careful about those opportunities as well.
This is Tina from Pennsylvania. Are you still finding that annuities and other products are being pitched at free lunch or dinner seminars?
Yeah, Tina, thanks for asking that. Yeah, that is something, and even myself, I bet all of us can identify with this. I get postcards myself in the mail. Maybe I'm in that age group now where people are wanting to buy me dinner at one of my local restaurants that I'm familiar with to pitch an opportunity for me to invest. And we see this a lot of times, and sometimes these things are okay. But one of the things that we always want to make sure we tell people is that you've got to check out your investment professionals that are trying to get you to invest with them. There are a lot of good investment professionals out there that want to help us with our investing. And those folks, if they are good and legitimate, they're going to be registered with your state to be able to sell those securities in your state. And they're also going to be able to be checked out online. And there are many different ways that we can check out our investment professionals and the investments themselves, the companies that they work for. We can look and see if there's any problems that an investment professional has been up against in the past. I mean, if you know somebody has a lot of complaints, maybe we need to make sure that we investigate those folks before we hand over our money to them. But, simple websites like investor.gov, for example, is a good one to go to where you can check out those folks before you hand over that money. But, annuities, Tina, you mentioned those as well. As we get older, annuities, are a good product for many of us. But when you get into your later years, you need to make sure that you're asking questions about when can I access this money that I've got in an annuity? And if I need to get to it quickly, if I take it out before I'm supposed to, what does that mean to us as far as fees or penalties that might be associated with that. So always asking questions, I think, is important, and don't always just trust those that are assisting you. Ask good questions.
Brought up how to work with an investment professional and kind of do your own homework, because the Federal Trade Commission recently released some survey results and showed that cryptocurrency is the second form of payment behind bank transfers when it comes to financial scams. Working with a financial professional is important. Are there any tips you would give consumers, or any suggestions you have for financial professionals to protect their clients when it comes to scams that are being pitched to them on a daily basis?
Well, I think for the first thing that I would want to tell everybody is that if it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true. And I got to tell you, so many times when I hear people tell me about scams that they've been a part of, what was pitched to them sounded really good. 18, 24% interest. This kind of stuff just generally is not happening. And when it sounds too good to be true, again, boy, do I find it to be so. So making sure that that you slow down, don't move too quickly, like you're mentioning, checking out those professionals. And then also, I think as a more seasoned investor, a senior needs to trust in their own family network. I find a lot of times we tend not to talk to those around us that we trust like we should. I have had kids of seniors contact us before about things that they feel like their parents may be involved in. Having a trusted agent or somebody that you can turn to ask questions, bounce these things off of them, or even our office ourselves. I get calls frequently from investors asking about certain things. Is this something that sounds legitimate to you? We would encourage you, if you have questions about legitimacy on investments, you feel like that maybe it is too good to be true, call us and we would love to talk to you about that, because maybe we can head some of this off at the pass.
Agreed. This is Lynn again. We tell everyone to go to nasa.org, and if they're going to check out their broker in particular, brokercheck.finra.org. Those are great places to go check things out. We always tell people ask questions. That's the number one thing. Ask questions.
Absolutely. And the other thing that we see a lot of times, and I think it's just good policy, security policy for all of us anyway, but emails, when emails come into our email box, we get a lot of those. If you don't know who it is that's corresponding with you, don't open those emails. Don't click on the attachments that come with these emails. A lot of times this is malware that can be placed onto your computer that can start to track some of the things that you're doing online. It's important, again, that we're not communicating with people that we don't know. If you just all of a sudden get a text on your phone from somebody offering some great investment opportunity, why did you get that? Who is this person? And starting to talk to somebody like this is really where a lot of people get into trouble. And this is what we call pig butchering, where sometimes it will be an unsolicited text or even a phone call from somebody talking about an investment opportunity. Why did you get that call or that text? We need to be thinking in terms of that. And a lot of these fraudsters are calling people off lists, and each of us can find ourselves on lists. And if you're on a list of potential investors that they've gotten a hold of, then certainly we want to be cautious and check these folks out before we start to give any personal information to them, or worse yet, giving them our hard-earned money.
Thank you so much, John. And I think we just need to remember stranger danger.
Isn't that the truth?
Next, we'll talk with Lynn Peters and her team from Washington State.
Thanks, Nick. So, and John, I would follow up on, you had touched a little bit on affinity fraud, and it's not just the strangers we need to watch out for, right? Sometimes it's people within our own circles. And I know that all of our states have prosecuted organizations that did fairly large affinity fraud swindling. I've seen many that were done through churches. We called that fleecing their flock. We've seen some in community centers. It can be knitting groups, whatever it is. And, you know, in the 16 years I've been here, it feels like there's a new version of it every year, right? And we never seem to stop. Recently, and I'm lucky, I think we're all lucky to work where we do work. You know, I work with folks like we have William Baldwin and Quincy Carlos in our securities division today with us. When Quincy heard about a suspicious investment pitches circulating within a local community, she and William got involved and jumped into action and put together a flyer and went and did a presentation. I'm going to have them talk a little bit about themselves. William and Quincy, can you introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about this particular incident that came up here in our state?
Yeah, thanks so much, Lynn. My name is William Baldwin. I'm a securities examiner here with the Securities Division. I've been with the unit for 10 years. I'm part of the local community that Lynn is talking about. I'm a Filipino American, and my colleague, Quincy Carlos, new to the division, I'll let her introduce herself, but she's also a member of that community.
Hi, I'm Quincy Carlos. I've only been with the division for 8 months, and doing the same thing as William as an examiner for the securities division.
Okay, so Quincy, tell us a little bit about what you heard that piqued your interest and why you thought it might be a fraud.
Yes, so the guaranteed return was definitely the first red flag I saw. And I was, invested because, especially it's a family member, and they are seniors. And the agent's wife is Filipino, who basically had a few retired Filipino clients, and those clients told their friends about the returns, and it just, sort of, I guess, exploded from there. And I told the family member, give, this is the FINRA website, or this is how you could verify if this person is registered, because they're not going to be, they can't sell any security unless they're registered. And I saw some statements. GS Partners Global is the name of the company that sold them the securities. So I told him, let's just, talk to the guy and see if you could try to maybe withdraw some of the funds that you gave him, because apparently they went to the guy's house and handed them cash. No receipts given, just a user ID and password where they can see what they've purchased. And they tried withdrawing the funds, and unfortunately they said, because you're not following the schedule, you can't withdraw the interest that you've already incurred. You're only going to be able to withdraw whatever the initial investment. And the attempt to withdraw the funds, they lured them into having another investor purchase the share of the family member of mine that was trying to withdraw the funds.
Wow. And William, how did you get involved in this?
Yeah, as Quincy mentioned, as a new person to the securities division, she had a lot of questions. So she brought them to our attention, and goodness, I think 6 examiners spent a couple hours trying to do a deep dive in different avenues. Who are the people involved? What kind of security, and air quotes around security, are being offered? We didn't know what we didn't know until we took a pretty deep dive on this company. And so we gave Quincy as much information as we could. Hey, here are the people we think are involved. Here's what we are seeing. Here's actions. Well, at the time, orders or warnings that other jurisdictions had produced. Notably, the Alberta Securities Commission has a warning list that they put this group on. And so we said, Quincy, here's the information. Take this back to your family members. And if we can get any more information, we may be able to do something. And so we gave the information to Quincy, and I'll let her sort of take over from here and the sort of roadblock that she hit.
Yeah, I did talk to my family, a couple of my family members that purchased this so-called security, and unfortunately, they're afraid of, what this may result into. They are, you know, I mean, they're retired, and they're one ashamed of um, being scammed, and two, I think they are still in denial that this is not a real investment. Um, One of my other family member is actually still um, invested with the guy, unfortunately. And I'm trying the best I can to help them out as well. But yeah.
And so when Quincy came back with that information, we were a little disheartened. We couldn't really progress with our investigation. So we reached out to Lynn directly, our wonderful communications director here in Washington. And we said, Lynn, what can we do? Having an outreach event, do you think that would be beneficial? And of course, Lynn stopped what she was doing and was like, yes, let's do an event. And so, through the help of not only Quincy but Lynn, we were able to create a custom presentation for the community. We were able to create handouts in Tagalog, the primary language of the Philippines, and we were able to reach the community directly. Quincy put on the presentation, a wonderful presentation, and she spoke to the group in Tagalog, which was very beneficial. Myself as a Filipino American, I can only respond in English. I can kind of follow along, but I was very glad to have Quincy there to do the entire presentation in Tagalog, and then also to review the handout itself. And Quincy, could you talk about the handout and the translation of that handout?
Yeah, it was. Uh, I did talk to the people that worked at the community, and they appreciate that the translation isn't as it made sense. Sometimes when you translate English to a different language, it doesn't make sense. So they do appreciate that. They appreciate all the information that we've provided. And apparently, this is a thing that's been going around the Filipino community. And some agencies came and talked to them about it as well. But they do appreciate that somebody that speaks the same language, um, because when you're giving so much information, if English isn't your first language, you can only take much. And I feel like I can talk to them heart to heart by delivering the presentation in our own language.
And that's something we try and work with on a regular basis, is making sure we have a member from the community that we do presentations with. We were really lucky that we have two members of the community here on staff who could go into this community. So how was the presentation received by the community?
It was good. They find it that they said thank you for. They appreciate that we didn't deliver the presentation 100% in English, because sometimes it just, I mean, in Tagalog, it has to be sort of a Taglish as well, because it made sense to in my community to not, it makes sense to not translate some words that are big in English that doesn't make any more sense in Tagalog. So I kind of have to pick some words that I needed to translate in Tagalog that made more sense to everybody. But it was helpful. We had a few people that came to us after the presentation asking some questions and sharing some of their experiences. And we were quite shocked that there were a few more people that have experienced that than we thought.
And it was very interesting. Quincy's family is about 20 miles south. They were targeted about 20 miles south of where our primary outreach event was. And we had about 80 people, 80 to 100 people. People kept flowing in and leaving during the presentation. And it was interesting that a lot of people didn't know this group by name. And so I think we did a tremendous job getting the information out to the community to be aware. Like John had said, to sort of question, to have a healthy bit of skepticism, to review, to verify, and just to ask yourself, why am I the lucky one getting this opportunity? And do these numbers make sense? The last 4 years, the last 3 years has been difficult for everyone, but notably that senior population that may be even more isolated. They're looking for connection. They may have a retirement shortfall. They may be looking out for their beneficiaries or their heirs. And so they may be the ones that are targeted because they have the assets. And to get that information to them, what can we do? I think one of the most important things that we can do as a community is to remove the stigma from being targeted and being taken advantage of. There was a recent article regarding Gen Z, and Gen Z is being targeted at a much higher rate, and they are also falling for, a variety of online scams at a higher clip than the older generations. And you stop and you think about it, and you're like, well, why is that? These people were born into the age of technology and they've grown up using these platforms. And so some of that natural skepticism has been eroded. I'm here every day and I can tell the difference, but it turns out, unfortunately, these scams are getting more efficient. They're becoming more targeted. They're becoming better. And so the groups that you don't think are being taken advantage of are being taken advantage of. The groups that you think are being taken advantage of are being taken advantage of. So it's not just the older communities, the older generations, but it really is everyone. Everyone's going to be the target of this. And how can we protect ourselves?
Thank you.
Wow.
I look at it as we're all targeted. We all have bullseyes on our chest when it comes to scammers looking at us. They all want our money. We have the key is asking questions. If we don't trust the people around us, ask questions elsewhere. Go to nasa.org, go to SEC, all those different places. Tina, what are you seeing?
So, William, I really appreciate all that you just talked about. And Quincy, thank you so much, because you brought up a really good point that younger people are being scammed as well. They are reporting more often, it says. However, senior citizens are losing way more. And let's think about that a little bit. A senior citizen, a day in the life of many senior citizens is they are being bombarded by telemarketing calls, unsolicited mail. They, as William had talked about, may be socially isolated. Their partner of 50 plus years may have passed away, so they could be in a bereavement period. Maybe they needed a knee replacement or are sick, and they're taking medications that are throwing them off a little bit. And the medications may be affecting the way that they think or make decisions. Let's also layer on the fact that they're aging and there may be some form of cognitive decline. Maybe. That's very blurry, and we should never assume that there is cognitive decline. It could just be a bad day. But let's mix all of that together and think about, this is the generation that is being targeted. They have a lot going on. They have the health-related effects of aging. They have the financial burden. As they're older, they need to make some more important decisions, because one wrong move and that senior citizen could lose their entire life savings. And they don't have the time to get it back the way younger people do. And then we have the demographic trends. There are 10,000 Americans turning 65 every day. And it's very easy to understand why this is such an urgent issue and why we're talking about this today. So, Lynn, you asked me, in my role as an education, on the education side, the proactive role of the securities regulator, we go out and try to speak to people before the con artists do, because we all know that it's very difficult to get money back. And what's the biggest question they ask is, how can we avoid this? If only we knew. But there are some things we can do. And the number one thing that I say is to establish and maintain a team approach to financial security. So let's say you have a senior parent or a relative. You want to make sure that you have a trusted accountant, an attorney, a tax preparer, a family member, a group that forms a checks and balances. They can all check on each other because unfortunately, family members or people that senior citizens know do make up a large part of how they are being financially exploited. So I'd actually like to go back to John for some of your thoughts on what I just said, because you in law enforcement have seen a lot as well. And we know that there's that crime that is the physical and violent crime, but then we have the financial crime that also takes a toll on people that can cause depression. I know, William, you talked about they're reporting less because they're afraid to give up their autonomy, possibly could lead to that. So John, I just wanted to throw it back to you for some of your thoughts.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tina. And, I got to say, I appreciate all that you guys do on the investor education side. On the law enforcement side, we all work together as one team. But I think it's so important that we do get the word out, like we're doing in this podcast today, trying to get the word out that this is real life stuff. And what you just mentioned is exactly right. People have lost their life savings. And when we're talking about building a nest egg, as we have been in this 3-part segment, you don't have another lifetime to start over. And you mentioned that's so important for people to realize. When you get to the end of your life, when you're enjoying those golden years or what should be, you can't start over if you've just handed over your life savings to a scammer. So I do think that it's important that we get the word out. This idea that Quincy mentioned something earlier that struck me. We see a lot of times where people are ashamed, like Quincy mentioned, that they have turned over their life savings to a scam artist. So a lot of times they won't talk about it because of the shame that comes with this. It's important, Tina, like you mentioned, that we do talk to our family members, the trusted folks around us, about what's going on. Not too long ago, we had a gentleman that the investment professional contacted us, thought something was wrong because a gentleman was withdrawing large sums of money from his account. And he was saying because he wanted to buy sports cars. There were sports cars, and the investment professional felt like that this was probably not true. Well, come to find out, it was actually a romance scam that was happening, where this gentleman had online met somebody that was building a relationship with him online, and all of a sudden started to need money, and then it became an investment opportunity, and money was being withdrawn from investment accounts to give to this person. So, I think you cannot be careful enough with those that are looking to take your money and make it something more than what it is. William mentioned earlier, you cannot make this stuff go fast. If it's going fast, there's probably a problem. We need to slow it down.
Is there anything that we may have left out that you would like to add before we close on today's podcast?
Yeah, Nick, thanks so much. I think some of the telltale signs of a scam will become blurrier as we progress with technology. AI, there's a variety of tools that are out there, deep fakes, will make our jobs a lot harder in the future. The idea that the AI can create scripts, that the AI can correct grammar mistakes, and the sort of normal signs we would see on advertising or websites or social media, that's going to make our lives a little bit harder in the future. It's going to be, at the rate that people are being scammed now, given some of those signs that we see, as they disappear, as they become corrected, I think we are going to see a lot more of this, unfortunately. And so we need to be more proactive, get this information out to the community. I think one of the most disheartening things at our outreach event were the people that came up to us to tell us about a time that they were taken advantage of, and it's outside of our purview. We didn't have the authority. This is a scam in a different area that we have no authority to sort of go after. And unfortunately, not all agencies have the resources that we do to conduct these events, to go directly to the community. It seems that this is far more impactful to reach the community where they are, rather than for them to come to us. And the other, disheartening item was a lot of the people in the community had no idea who we were or what we do. And that's a lot of what we're trying to do. This is who we are. Please come to us.
And that's something that has been something we've been struggling with for a long time. I've been doing outreach for 16 years, and as soon as we get one group ready to know who we are, then it's time to go out and find another group. The big thing we promote is ask questions, verify who you're working with, and report it. Report it to us. We can always send things on to another organization or agency. We can send things on to the FTC. We work with organizations like the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, that is. Sorry about the jargon. It's important that people not be ashamed and embarrassed, but they be angry that this has happened to them and report them.
Wow. This has been so informative, and thank you all for your time. I'm so glad that we have people like all of you committed to helping investors avoid fraud. So, how can someone check the background of a person making an investment offer? Go to nasa.org. That's NASAA.org. Click the Contact Your Regulator tab located in the top right corner, and then simply click your jurisdiction's regulator located on the map to obtain the contact information for your regulator. Being an informed investor means having a plan and understanding each of your investments. Whether you're new to investing or already investing, NASA and its members provide a variety of online investor education resources for investors of all ages. Visit nasa.org for more information on how to be a wise and safe investor. Again, that's nasa.org, NASAA.org. Thank you so much for joining me, and more importantly, thank you for the work that you do each day to protect investors. And that's all for today's episode. From John in Kansas, Tina in Pennsylvania, and Lynn, William, and Quincy in Washington, thank you for joining us. And from Montgomery, Alabama, I'm Nick Bondary. If you have any questions about today's episode or would like more information about topics discussed, please email us at realliferegulators@gmail.com. That's realliferegulators, all one word, @gmail.com. And if you'd like to hear future episodes, please hit the subscribe button.